surprise here, for that matter, that a movie with Tom Hanks, like whatever version of the Da Vinci Code that is behind me, is one of the longest, most boring pieces of film that you'll ever see. Tom Hanks is Nikola Jokic. The Da Vinci Code, whatever this was, is the Denver Nuggets regular season. It doesn't matter. None of this matters. The Philadelphia 76ers regular season, Joel Embiid winning the MVP. None of this matters because neither one of them could do anything in the playoffs. And we're just sitting here watching a regular season in which we know is going to come to an end. It's just get us to the playoffs. Get us to a 1-8 matchup where Denver is down to LA. Get us to a second round matchup where the Philadelphia 76ers are down once again. That's the drama that we come to see. And regular season Jokic or Tom Hanks, for that matter, and some of this long bullshit is just, it's not going to work. Welcome back. We went 3-2 last night in the 5-5. That's fine with me. We're ending up profit. That's fine. I think we got something going here. That's all. And I just want to keep moving with you. Let's head on over to DraftKings. We have a lot of games to talk about. And this is going to be insanity. Hey, you know what I want to do? Start with the total, and we're going to go under Raptors Sixers tonight. Why? Mainly because Toronto's strength, while it's not winning games on the road, Toronto's strength has been honing down defensively. I think the Sixers right now understand that this is it. Like, you're looking around thinking, hey, the credits are about to roll in this god-awful Hanks movie. We better get the hell out of here now and beat traffic. I can't believe there's so many people in this theater. And that's what's happening with the Sixers with crunch time, is now trying to do whatever possible is left to catch Boston and to move up in your seeding, even though that is a fruitless activity. So, yeah, under 224.5, I think starters play a lot tonight. That's the big thing. Whenever we see more starters, that should
Welcome to MLB Day 2. This is the Stokastic Strategy Show. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. This show is produced by Mike Lawrence. You can find him on Twitter at AwesomeYo. And we're joined by legend Terry McBride. You can find him at DigitalB21. Our sponsor is Bet365, which has an almost too good to be true offer for users in just 4 states, those being New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, and Virginia. We'll talk about that later. Terry, how did MLB Day 1 go for you?
It went all right. It was an interesting day. Good day of baseball. My Yanks won. Got a just hanging out, watching baseball all day is fun. I slept through part of the late afternoon and then part of the evening, and then woke back up for the late games, played the late slate. Ultimately, I basically broke even. I have to go back and check what I did on the late slate. I know I didn't win it, but I got to see, where my ROI came in on it. But productive, fun first day, nothing overly profitable or anything like that. How about you?
It was really fun that it started at noon Central Time. Today is going to be a cluster because we've got first MLB starts at 5:40. I'll be on live before lock too. So MLB starting middle of live before lock. Then NBA starts at 6 o'clock. Also XFL, which if you don't know, I'm super into. XFL DFS also starts at 6 o'clock. So plus it's also Friday, which means So Rare NBA sets on Fridays and Mondays. It's just going to be a tough lock for me tonight. But yeah, yesterday went okay.
Some chainsaws later.
I am going. It's going
to
be a rough
NBA
day.
live before lock to watch Neil do that.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to enter lineups for 4 different. Yeah, it's going to be. I'm going to be EMAC out there, but EMAC just does it so coolly, calmly.
I have no idea how he is a machine. I mean, he's been doing it so long that the clicks are just muscle memory and everything now, which I'm still I'm pretty good with it. I know everything and I can do it with my eyes closed, but I mean, he is just amazing. He's doing 5 to 6 different sports at the same time, 2 different sites, on a show, hosting, doing promo reads all at the same time. I'm sitting here panicking, trying to get lineups into one thing. I don't know how he does it.
I don't know how he does it. Justin Sports says, Neil, you got to speak in the real time zones, bro. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm talking about real America time. Here's Central time zone, real America time. And Larry is correct. You're going to be able to watch me melt down live during live before lock. If we get like breaking news for XFL, that's the other thing. It's like you don't really get all the inactives. Like NFL, you get an hour and a half. You get the injury reports out. You know who's going to be in, who's going to be out for the game.
And
XFL,
you also just largely know like which teams, which players are on too. I imagine
that is
some
also
association at this point from having done it, but like still, there's a lot of names out there in the XFL that you probably just don't know or don't know. Like, oh, this guy's immediate backup is this guy. I would think, yeah.
MJ Higgins says NBA.
Did you see what Mike just put on the screen? He's got a.
Oh no, I was reading chat and I was like, "Be like what?"
For the chat out.
Oh, I missed it. Wait, I can't see it. I don't know where to see it.
The image of Ted Stryker sweating from the movie Airplane.
Yeah. Nice. I was just MJ Hiding says NBA not even offering 100K to first. Yeah, what do you think of that, Terry? It seems like things that flip. Maybe it's just because it's so early MLB. We get 100K to first for MLB and just 50K to first for NBA. That is not typical for these sports.
I had not noticed that. I saw that on DK. It was 100K to first. On FanDuel, I think it's the main smaller tournament is 30K, and then they have 100K for like a $400 buy-in, like a big boy buy-in tournament. So FanDuel didn't do it that way. I think they went back to their standard NBA pricing. But yeah, I guess DK is trying to pump up the start of the MLB season here and wind down NBA a little bit, and then I'm sure they'll bounce back for the playoff slates, at least at the beginning when they've got big slates. So yeah, but yeah, it's interesting. I like to see them putting a little money behind MLB for sure.
Yeah, me too. Life's MVP asks, any MLB promo code for weekly sub? Mike, can you throw that into chat? We do have the MLB is back promo. If you throw the link in the description, Mike, you just click that. It will pre-populate the MLB is back promo code. So you'll be able to sign up for 50% off your subscription when you sign up. So yeah, check that out. Mike, if you could, whenever you can throw that in the chat, would be appreciated for Life's MVP. But Terry, we got just a 5-gamer here after the huge slate yesterday, just 5 games to talk about today. I know that you were the guy to take up over an hour talking about 5 MLB games because you get into the weeds with this stuff. But before we even start jumping in game by game, do you have any overarching thoughts for this particular slate?
Well, I think there's some interesting things that we can take from yesterday, like the massive increase in stolen bases that we saw on opening day yesterday. I saw a tweet about it that somebody shared in our Discord, and I'll jump back over there and see if I can find it really quick. But it was something like, here it is. In 2022, so last year, opening day stolen base, and take it with a grain of salt. This is one day, but this kind of validates everything we were expecting to happen with these bigger bases, with these new pitching rules. In 2022, there were 5 stolen bases and 4 caught stealings on opening day for a 56% success rate. Yesterday, 21 stolen bases, 2 caught stealing, 91% success rate.
No way. So that is massive, a huge increase.
Jump in attempts, massive jump in success. I am expecting big stolen base numbers from a lot of players this season. So I think it's going to be a factor all season long. I think we have to account for it. The speedy guys, it's going to be a little bit obvious. The Jorge Mateos of the world. Mateo stole two bags yesterday. The Anthony Volpe swiped the bag in his Yankees debut. But guys like, going back to the Yankees, guys like Aaron Judge, who stole, I think, 16 bases last year, has a good chance to go upwards of 20 just with these new rules. We were talking about it a little bit yesterday. You and Adam were talking, or you and Alex rather, were talking about it. And I mentioned it in chat. Not only did they increase the size of the bases, which is definitely going to help with plays at second base, they also changed the rules for how often a pitcher can throw over. You can only throw over to first twice per at bat now, or twice per plate appearance rather. So it really limits their ability to hold runners on and to play all these games that they used to do. These guys are going to be exploiting that all season long. So it's going to be a factor. We've got, different park shifts to keep our eyes on and everything throughout the start of the season here. But I think day 2, we can just kind of dive into the game by game outside of that.
As a seam head, what do you feel about the new rules? Like, do you like all the changes they made? Are there any that you don't like? In descending order of hatred, it's the runner on second base automatically to start extra innings is something I will never ever like. 2 years ago, right?
That's several years ago. Yeah, they did that, and they've just kept it. Originally, it was we're just going to do it this year because of the pandemic and all that bullshit, and then they just have decided to keep it.
Wait, and this is the one that you hate the most. You said
that's the one I hate the most.
Descending order. Okay,
yeah. The bigger bases I don't really mind. That's not really on there. That's fine. I don't love the idea of limiting the pitcher's ability to throw over to first, but I kind of get it. I hate the pitch clock. I think it's stupid. I think they're just making a lot of rules to cater to people who already don't like baseball and aren't going to give it a chance anyway. It's just kind of silly to me.
That's I've heard mixed reviews. I have seen a lot of people say like, yeah, I get why people hate this, but also it really turned up the pace of play, made it a lot more fun. I see CESC Monty says the pace of play has been fantastic with the rule changes. So I think that there's a mix of opinions out there, and who knows, maybe once get used to it. But if you've been watching for a long time,
it is a sport with which they have tinkered. There's a history of tinkering with baseball. The mound goes up, the mound goes down, the walls, everything changes in baseball. So it's part of the tradition of baseball that things do change like this. It might change back. It might change to something different. So I don't really have a major problem with it. Like, I'm not going to throw up my arms and not watch baseball anymore. I just don't like some of these changes. I'm not a pure traditionalist. Oh, getting rid of the shift. I hated that, right? I like the shift. I think the shift, if you can't manage to strategically alter your game to counter their strategy, that's your problem. That is not a baseball problem, right? The strategy is the strategy. Like, that was them playing smart baseball. So I like the shift. I hate the idea of banning the shift. I think that's a new change that's just ridiculous and silly, and hopefully that one goes away. So I'm not like a pure, straight up traditionalist. I want them to be able to shift. I don't care where the guys are on the field. So
what do you think of this? The same guy, CESC Monty, says, I think they should turn off the pitch clock by the 7th inning. I think that's kind of a nice compromise. Like, you speed up the early game, but then once it gets intense, let pitchers do what they need to do.
Yeah, I definitely don't mind that. I think it's a good idea, because you get down to those crucial innings in baseball. The first inning can be as important, as crucial as the 9th inning in a lot of ways. So yes and no. Like, it's not necessarily that, like, diminishing, like, all right, now it's the 4th quarter and we're really going to actually try hard, where we've been dicking around for the first 3 quarters.
But from a fan perspective, at least.
But yeah, I can get behind that idea at least.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump in game by game. We can keep talking about this throughout, but we should talk about this DFS slate. First game we have is Mets at Marlins. Mets with a 4.5 implied team total. Marlins have a 3 implied team total. David Peterson on the mound for the Mets. Jesus Luzardo for the Marlins. Let's start with the pitchers, and I'll just throw to you both of them. Peterson, Luzardo. Any interest in either of these pitchers?
Yeah, I mean, I'll have shares of a pretty good handful of these guys, particularly on a 5-game slate with. It's kind of a mixed bag of pitching. It's surprising for day 2 of the season. Small slate, I guess, is part of it, and losing Justin Verlander certainly a part of it. So there's a little bit of difference there. But yeah, it's gonna be a slate where I'm gonna be grabbing a decent amount of shares of a lot of these guys, because I see a lot of them fairly the same. Looking at our top starters tool, we've got David Peterson ranked a little ways down the board on DK. He's 4th from the bottom on DK, but keep in mind, we're only talking about 10 pitchers. Jesus Luzardo, 4th from the top. So he's the more favorable of the two, but he's negatively leveraged, where David Peterson, also negatively leveraged, but slightly less. I do have interest. Both are capable pitchers. They don't project out amazingly well for me, but they're kind of right in the middle of the small pack here. If we're talking Peterson, 105 2/3 last year, 27.8% strikeout rate. Luzardo, 100 1/3 with a 30% strikeout rate. So both guys who didn't throw complete 200 inning seasons last year, but certainly show a lot of quality. A 3.1 xFIP for Peterson, a 3.11 xFIP for Luzardo. So a couple of very capable lefties, guys I'm certainly interested in. Prices are right. They're not unfair. Luzardo may be a little bit expensive at 91 on FanDuel, but again, limited options, and that ranks him 5th by price when we've got him 4th on his overall output potential. So I kind of like Luzardo here, but deadly Mets lineup. Peterson's got the better matchup facing the Marlins. So a bit of a toss up between these two, but I'll have shares of both.
Okay. Let's jump into the bets. We'll start with the Mets. Have a 4.5 implied team total, the tied for the highest, just behind. So there's the Mariners that have everybody, but 4.5 implied team total for the Mets, going up against Luzardo. How much interest, if any, do you have in stacking the Mets? Any one-offs you like? Tell me about what you like from the Mets bats.
Yeah, I think we can definitely get into some Mets bats here. They're drawing medium ownership, I'd say, mid-teens for the hitters we'd really want. Alonso pushing 20% on the FanDuel slate, but only 12.8% on the DK slate. For him, he's kind of interesting. 3,800 on FanDuel, 5,600 on the DK slate. We've got some really different price points, coming in, not just because of the the ways that they just structure everything differently. Just the sites are viewing some of these guys a little bit differently to start the season. So there's more than just the baked in price difference there, site to site for Alonso. But it's a deadly top of the lineup for the Mets. Brendan Nimmo, Starling Marte, Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso. You get into the Kana, Eduardo Escobar, Tommy Pham, Jeff McNeil part of the lineup, and it's guys that you can you can grab those guys and combine them with some of the hitters from the top to fill out your stack, to extend things, to offset some ownership. But really, we want to be focused on the top 4 hitters here in this lineup, and then grab shares of an Eduardo Escobar for low ownership. He's a guy who's interesting, switch hitter, knocked 20 out of the park last year, 542 plate appearances with a 190 ISO. Year before that, 28 home runs with a 219 ISO. So he's a power bat that, potentially people are sleeping on. He's not expensive, 4,500 on DK, 2,500 on FanDuel, only drawing single digit ownership, like 3% ownership. So Eduardo Escobar with that top end of the lineup is definitely a interesting, probably the first stack I would build with the Mets, but I think there's a lot of different ways to put that team together.
I think we have a better idea now, like who's going to be, because it's so early in the year, teams aren't like rotating out their best players. We kind of know what the lineup is going to be. Is it easier to predict now?
Yeah, I mean, baseball works that way a lot anyway. You get a lot of platoon shifting with certain teams where, okay, lefty on the mound, this guy's going to be playing first base, righty on the mound, that guy's going to play first base. But baseball is at least more reliable and more predictable. It's certainly not basketball. It's maybe a little bit less reliable than football, where the only thing that takes a guy out of a lineup really is an injury. Baseball players do get days off, but you typically know when they're coming. There's way fewer surprises in baseball. So at the beginning of the season, we definitely have a little bit more of a rock solid. This is what they did through spring. This is what they want to be. Everybody's healthy. So you can kind of pencil guys in a little bit easier. So a little bit of a yes and a little bit of a just not that big a factor for me.
Yeah, true. Okay, so some interest in the Mets. And are you going to do any Marlins stacks here, either primary or secondary stacks, or any Marlins you like as one-offs?
Yeah, there's enough talent on this Marlins team that I don't hate going there this year. At least to start, we can kind of mess with it and see where we get. But they're all going to be fairly low owned. The interesting players are drawing around double-digit ownership, like Gene Segura in the 2 spot, 11.6% owned on DK for 4,600 multi-position between second and third, 16% owned because he's only 2,300 on FanDuel, but he's only third base on FanDuel. So he's an interesting spot as far as using up that corner infield spot versus being able to use him at second. But he's a talented guy, 277, 336, 387 last year, created runs 5% better than average, 10 homers, 13 steals. I can definitely see an uptick in steals coming from Gene Segura. You put him together with like a Jazz Chisholm Jr., Jorge Soler, and Avi Garcia in that lineup. Maybe you lock in Luis Arias from the top of the lineup, last year's AL batting champ, now in Miami. 316, 375, 420 for him last year, created runs 31% better than average. He's not an independent scorer, but he's a great correlation piece. So if you're grabbing a bunch of guys to stack from behind him, grab the guy who's going to be on base that's going to score their runs, maybe swipe a couple bags as well. So a top of the lineup stack there, I'm good with. I can take or leave Garrett Cooper. Decent contact profile, 10.7% barrel rate with a 43.3% hard hit, but he translated that only into 9 home runs last season, which is a little bit concerning for that contact profile. So I don't love him. We'll see where he's hitting in the lineup. You can, if you're building a lot of Marlins shares, you certainly want to include him. But if you're only building one Marlins stack, I would probably lean toward like Arias, Segura, Chisholm, and either Soler or Avi Garcia. Avi Garcia always nice against the lefty. He's down year last year, 380 plate appearances, only hit 8 home runs, a 0.092 ISO, created runs 34% worse than average. But we've seen Avi Garcia be a better player than that. The year before, 29 homers and 515 plate appearances, a 115 WRC plus. So a decent player who had a down season last year, maybe somebody that a lot of people won't be considering on the plus side of his platoon splits.
All right, let me throw a curveball at you. Not no pun intended.
Early season curveball, I love it.
Yeah, Mike sees. Anybody you like for more because of the new rules? So anybody you think like is a little bit more likely, you bump the projection in terms of just stolen bases, runs because of the bigger bases.
So it's not something where I've tinkered with my projections yet.
Okay.
I got to figure out how I'm going to account for that. I want to see it. One thing I definitely want to do is take a look through the projections that I use as the backbone of my model, which I do when I load it up. I tinker with it a little bit. I don't go straight line with Steamer's projections where I think they're, boy, that's cocky to say on day 2 of the season, but where I think Steamer is wrong, I might make some changes to tweak my model so that it's truly my model. And one thing I didn't really look at was those stolen bases, and I need to go back and do that to see how they accounted for it. And so I might increase on the back end for that. But to answer your question specifically for this game, certainly a guy like Starling Marte, we can see he stole 18 bags and 505 plate appearances last year, but he is a stolen base specialist. We can see him tick up toward 30 stolen bases. Francisco Lindor is going to see an uptick. But on the less obvious end, or the guys that you might not already be rostering, those are two guys that are going to be in your lineups anyway. What about John Birdie if he's in the lineup down the bottom of the Marlins lineup?
There
He's
you go,
4,300. He's drawing a little bit of attention on DK because he plays second and short for that price. So he's 16% on 2,600 second and third on FanDuel, drawing some popularity there as well. Stole 41 bags in only 404 plate appearances last season. He's a speed demon. If he gets on base, he's going to be going. And he's one of those guys like a Jorge Mateo, who you can just expect steals when he gets on. He gets on a little more frequently than Mateo. 324 on base last year. Mateo, I think, was like 267 or something like that, and still stole 35 bases. I love Jorge Mateo. It's just shamelessly. But yeah,
it was great yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. If he gets on, he's going to be a very nice piece all year long. A little bit more pop too, but yeah. So it's guys like Birdie that I'm kind of keeping my eye out for. He might be a little bit too highly owned for that spot today, though. I hadn't noticed the ownership being in the mid-teens, pushing 20%. But guys like that are the ones that we want to keep our eyes out for. These formerly afterthought utility type guys who have a little bit of speed, who can get on, maybe play as a wraparound. Like Birdie, if he's acting in the 9th spot, you could wrap him back around to the top to those hitters I talked about before. Tommy Edman from the Cardinals is going to be great for that all season long if he's hitting 9.
Yeah, I was going to ask you specifically about Birdie because we got Ken Simmons in chat was wanting to know your thoughts on Birdie, and maybe he gets a bump. But yeah, as Ken says, and as you said, it's a little bit high ownership there. Like he's not the contrarian play that maybe you would have hoped that Birdie would be. But anything else you want to say about this Mets Marlins game before we move on to game number 2?
No, just feel bad for my poor Mets friends spending $1 billion on their lineup and just can't seem to get it right.
Yeah, that's rough. That is rough. MLB is back. So we mentioned this promo at the top of the hour because we had somebody ask about it, but I will tell you again. So it's only valid through April 2nd. So make sure you take advantage of it now. You can celebrate the return of MLB with 50% off your monthly Stokastic Platinum subscription. Again, that it's not just MLB, it's actually for all sports. So the full monthly Stokastic Platinum subscription, 50% off using promo code MLB is back. It's available for new and existing users. So really great deal for everybody here. Click the link in the description of this video. Again, it will auto-populate that promo code MLB is back for you. Easiest way to take advantage of this deal. So make sure you do that. You get access to everything other than Pick'em Pro and Bet Pro. You get access to projections, ownership projections, lineup generator, boom bust tool, all the stuff that we're talking about here on the show. So make sure you take advantage of that MLB is back promo. It is available for everyone. All right, Terry, next game is White Sox at Astros. Lance Lynn on the mound for the White Sox, Christian Javier for the Astros. White Sox have a 3 implied run total, Astros 4.5. We'll start with the pitchers again. Any interest in Lance Lynn or Christian Javier?
Yeah, I like both pitchers. In a vacuum, I would like both pitchers more because I think they're both in tough spots, but certainly both capable of pitching through these lineups. I would say out of the two, the guy who's drawing a little bit more ownership is probably the better option, Christian Javier from the Astros side of things. 148 2/3 in 25 starts last year, 33.2% strikeout rate, 3.35 xFIP, a 0.95 whip. Nothing not to like. Induces a ton of swinging strikes at 13.8% last year. Doesn't really allow too many home runs, decent at inducing medium contact, soft contact, only a 33.3% hard hit rate last year. So he's a definite option. He's drawing ownership, like I said, 8,200 on DK, has him about 40%. He's 10-1 on FanDuel, so he's only about 19% over there on the single pitcher site. Definitely a very strong option. Decent amount of strikeouts in that White Sox lineup, but there are a few guys who are very good at avoiding the strikeout too, like Timmy Anderson, like Andrew Benintendi. So it's going to be interesting to see how many he can rack up. But if we're looking for an obvious strikeout leader today, I think Christian Javier is probably our guy. Just a tremendous strikeout rate. But I wouldn't sleep on Lance Lynn on the other side. Tough lineup here to face with the Astros. Certainly not their peak form with no Jose Altuve in there, but definitely still a very, very good lineup. Lynn came back last year and he got dinged in like his first 2 starts and people were writing him off and came back. He's a bulldog of a pitcher and he was himself through most of last season. 121 2/3, 24.2% strikeout rate, a 3.44 xFIP compared to his 3.99 ERA. So you can see a little bit of that difference there, right? What was underneath versus what was on the surface. But he induced a 13.3% swinging strike rate, only walked 3.7% of hitters last year, 1.14 whip. So he's giving up a little bit on the hit side of things, 3.71% home run rate. So a little bit of power, but he's still Lance Lynn. I'm not, until he's completely in the tank. I won't go away from Lance Lynn here. 9,500 fair price on FanDuel and only 7% owned. I kind of like that. I think I'll probably double that up at least. On DK, 8,800, 15% owned. Probably about right, but I think you could push beyond that if you wanted to. Just keep in mind, we are, as I've mentioned several times, dealing with a pretty deadly Astros lineup here.
Yeah, Lance Lynn actually has one of our best leverage scores on the slate. As you said, 15% projected ownership, 21% chance to be in top 2 pitcher on the board on DraftKings. So looks great on DraftKings. And yeah, Christian Javier is actually number 2 on the board in terms of top 2 pitcher odds behind Robbie Ray, with a 24% chance to be in a top 2 pitcher at 40% ownership. But I think we're often willing to eat the chalk a little bit more at pitcher when they've got that upside. How about the bats?
Yeah,
So
I think I would have those flipped if I was
really
weighing in. Yeah, I like Javier.
So you like Lynn better than Javier?
No, I'm saying I would have Javier above Robbie Ray.
Oh, okay, above Robbie Ray. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it's also only 8,200, so that's a nice little price savings there. Let's talk about the bats a little bit. So let's see. The White Sox have a 3 implied run total. Any interest in the White Sox?
Yeah. If we're throwing bats at ownership, playing that game as far as, the DFS side of it, the game theory side of it, I think they're a decent spot. We've got a lot of very capable hitters on this team, starting at the top with Tim Anderson, Luis Robert Jr. He's got a junior on his name this year, by the way, for people who were wondering about if you have issues with his stats popping up or whatever. He decided that this year he's going to be junior. So it's a little bit of a conflict with how some of the naming conventions work. But we've got him. We've got Andrew Benintendi on this team now. So like I mentioned, there's a lot of ability with between the hit tool, between some nice power with Robert and some good speed up at the top of that lineup. All 3 of those guys can run a little bit. So they're going to be interesting to watch getting on base, using their hit tool and seeing how much they run between the 3 of those guys. And then they lead into Eloy Jimenez, a monster power hitter. He only hit 16 in 327 plate appearances last year. The numbers are a little bit skewed by the lack of opportunity from some injuries, 231 plate appearances the year before. So we've got to have a healthy Eloy Jimenez for the entire season this year. I think we could see some monster numbers out of him in terms of the home run total, the run creation total. So I really like the 1 through 4 stack there. And then I can get behind a lot of these hitters later in the lineup. Joan Moncada, Andrew Vaughn, Jasmani Grandal, Oscar Colas, the rookie, big time rookie. Colas is only 2,000 dead minimum on DK, only pulling a 5% ownership projection right now. That's a toolsy player. He's got some speed. He's got some power. 2,200 on FanDuel, only 1.1% owned. I would not leave him out of all of my White Sox stacks by any means. I'd be looking to thread him into some White Sox stacks where you need a catcher. Yashmani Grandal, down season last year, 202, 301, 269, 68 WRC plus, 5 home runs. Year before that, he had a 420 on base. He created runs 59% better than average across 375 plate appearances. He was a monster the year before that. Truth is probably somewhere in the middle. We've seen a lot out of Yashmani Grandal over the years. So if you need a catcher, I wouldn't leave him out. I would maybe work him into a couple FanDuel lineups if I was building a bunch of White Sox stacks. The only guy on this team that I don't really want, which means he's probably going to go off for a monster game, and he's certainly a potential for steals, is Elvis Andrus. Elvis Andrus sucks at baseball. I will not hear it otherwise. I know he had a nice little year last year. That was the 3rd season in a career that's been since 2009 where he had a positive WRC plus. He is not a good baseball player. He can stay on the bench. You can use him if you want to. He's cheap. He fits in. Fine. I convinced myself. We'll use some Elvis Andrus, but I do not like Elvis Andrus. I don't expect much from him this season. So be wary, but 3,600 with that talent in terms of the stolen base ability as far as DFS goes, he's certainly a viable piece. I just don't like him, and I have to badmouth him. And that assures that he's going to do well.
Of course. Do you agree with Sean V that the Astros have the best bullpen?
Actually, no, he's probably right about that. There's a lot of really good bullpens now, though, just with all these power arms. So it's a little bit tough to judge, but they are absolutely on that list. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, definitely makes it a little bit tougher to want to play, anybody against them. But how about the other side of it? The Astros, 4.5 implied team total. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, this is a team that I love to hate or hate to love, or I don't know how that comes together really. But for DFS purposes, I'm all over this team all the time. Everybody probably remembers that from seasons past. They are an absolute source of power, of run creation, just monumental upside for these guys. That said, they're expensive. They're popular regardless of the price. So it's tricky. It's trickier on FanDuel because we're dealing with 37s, 41s versus on DK we're dealing with like 49s up to 57 for Jordan Alvarez. Alvarez still drawing 21.9% ownership at 5,700 over on DK. So, I mean, just they can't price him too high. Love that hitter. Last season, 306, 406, 613, a 306 ISO, 85% better than average creating runs, 37 homers. Like, what's not to love about Jordan Alvarez? They've got Jose Abreu on this team now, former White Sox star Jose Abreu. They've got Kyle Tucker in there. So I mentioned that Jose Altuve is missing from this lineup right now. He's injured, but it's basically a who cares. Like they can just skip over a star like that and just keep on rolling. Jeremy Pena at the top of the lineup, Alex Bregman. You can stack this team at the very least 1 through 5 very, very easily. Good luck as far as the pricing and the ownership goes, but on talent, you can definitely do that. What's interesting about them is the last 4 hitters in the lineup in the projected that I have, Yainer Diaz, Jake Myers, Martin Maldonado, and Mauricio Dubon, 2,000, 2,200, 2,600, 2,200 DK pricing, similarly minimum pricing on FanDuel, and not drawing very much ownership at all. Like those guys are going to be the keys to how you can unlock and put together the other guys in this lineup. Like you're going to need probably one of those guys. Dubon's interesting if he's hitting 9th, 5 home runs, 2 stolen bases, and 265 plate appearances. But I think there's a little bit more talent than that in his bat. He's got multi-position eligibility for the dead minimum on FanDuel, 2,200 on DK, second base and outfield. Makes him interesting if he's hitting 9th because he can act as that secondary leadoff hitter in the wraparound role there. So I like playing with the Astros here and mixing and matching the pieces and seeing what kind of interesting combinations I can make. A lot of different ways you can play them.
Yeah, the top stacks tool, we have them 12.4% chance of being the top stack. So number 2 on the board, 14% chance of being the top value stack. A little bit surprising there. And then 13.5% projected ownership for the Astros stack. So they look pretty good in the top stack. So number 2 on the board again in top stack odds.
Yeah, I mean, all their pricey players project out really, really well. So that's going to help on the value. And then coming in with it, having the pricing basically cut in half on the back end of the lineup for everybody, obviously is creating a tremendous amount of value. I just think it's really interesting how low owned some of those value pieces are. I would expect that that's going to go up. Maybe not around like Martin Maldonado, especially on FanDuel where you don't need catchers. Maybe a little bit on Jake Myers. Diaz is drawing a little bit more ownership than I would expect, but that's DK because he's 2,000 versus Maldonado. But it's just really interesting how those numbers are coming together. I'm going to be really curious to see what that looks like at like 6 o'clock.
Yeah, we've got really high ownership on Kyle Tucker and Jordan Alvarez over. I mean, it's a 5-game slate, so it's not even like that ridiculously high on these guys.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly playable.
Yeah, 22% on those guys. And then it's, even like Jose Abreu just down at 11%, Alex Bregman 12%. So not crazy high ownership on the Astros. Definitely.
And I tell you what,
a nice
Abreu for 4,200, Abreu should be more popular than that hitting cleanup on this team.
Yeah.
679 plate appearances. He only managed 15 home runs last year. That was a letdown. Year before that, though, 659 plate appearances. He hit 30 home runs. He's a well-known power commodity. There's nothing not to like about him. And even though the power was out a little bit, he still went 304, 378, 446 last year, created runs 37% better than average. Like, I don't necessarily care that the ball's not going out of the yard a lot of the time, as long as he's still driving in runs, doubling for me. I'd prefer a home run a lot of the time, but he is very, very capable. And if you look at the contact profile, 9.5% barrel rate, which is good, not great. That's why the home runs were diminished, but still a 51.7% hard hit rate. That's tremendous. Only struck out 16.2% of the time. This is where Lance Lynn's going to run into some problems, by the way, right? We've got, looking at the last year's numbers, Bregman, 11.7% strikeout rate. Jordan Alvarez, 18.9. Jose Abreu, 16.2. Kyle Tucker, 15.6. And then down, if you go all the way down and include Dubon, he's 11.3. So a lot of guys who are very good at avoiding the strikeout. That's where we ding Lance Lynn a little bit. That's coming through in the projections, but everybody's thinking that way. So on the DFS side of things, we can game it out and grab him at a little bit of low ownership. Hope he has a good Lance Lynn start, early season, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think there's upside there, but if he runs into trouble, it's going to be for lack of strikeouts.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense. Anything else you want to say about this game?
Have I not said enough about this game to satisfy you yet?
I think, I mean, oh yeah. So that's the difference in your personality and Alex. Alex yesterday, I asked him anything else about this game. Nope. Just like, he was very comfortable. Just like, I've said all I need to say. If I ask you 10 times, you're just going to keep adding, aren't you?
We can make this a live before lock if you really want to, Neil. That's who you want to talk about.
We're going to go. Yeah. It's going to be a long ass show. All right, let's move on then. I think Terry has said enough about this game. We'll move on to the Rockies at the Padres. Kyle Freeland on the mound for the Rockies. Nick Martinez for the Padres. Let's start with the pitchers. How much interest, if any, do you have in Freeland or Martinez?
Certainly not a lot. Freeland, I'd be surprised if I get to on FanDuel. DK, arguably, you could grab a few shares. He's 7,200. He's 2.5% owned. Like it's a piece. There's not a lot to love there. 174 and 2/3 last year, a 17.1% strikeout rate, a 4.49 xFIP compared to a 4.53 ERA. So he is who he was on the surface last season. There's no mystery here. 42% hard hit rate allowed. Only allowed a 2.48% home run rate. So he was okay at keeping the ball in the yard last year, but just not a pitcher you really want. Puts too many guys on base, creates too many opportunities. For a team like this, I expect them to be able to exploit that. A 1.41 whip is just allowing way too many base runners. So I don't really need many shares of Kyle Freeland here against the Pods. I think I would probably look more towards the Pod side of things. They've filled out this lineup, pretty well. So we'll see what that looks like. Other side of this one, Nick Martinez. Not a lot to love in terms of just pure talent, but he's only 7,300. He's drawing 23.4% ownership on DK. I think I'm a little bit more interested maybe at 15% on FanDuel for 7,600. That's essentially similar numbers, but I think I expect that'll probably come in a little lower than we have it projected now. I think he's somewhat viable, but we're talking about a guy, looking at the numbers last year, a 21.2% strikeout rate. So not a big strikeout guy, 9.2% walk rate. That's a high walk rate. He's got a lower whip than Freeland on the other side, but it's still not good at 1.29. He induced an okay swinging strike rate. He had a decent xFIP at 404. His ERA was 3.47. Mid-range in terms of home runs allowed. So he's fine. He's just like a middling type, mid rotation starter. He's not an upside piece really, but against the Rockies against a righty on the road has been a thing for quite a while now. And I don't really see that changing here. They've got a couple interesting left-handed bats on this team. Mike Moustakas is on this team now. I expect him to be in the lineup today against a righty, but it's not a great lineup. I don't expect much from the Rockies. So I think on those points and on price, you can get away with Nick Martinez. On a bigger slate, he wouldn't be a guy we were really talking about, though.
Interesting. So you say, I didn't know this was a thing. I mean, I knew that Rockies on the road is obviously kind of a thing. They're going to have huge splits playing at Coors, but Rockies on the road against a righty pitcher, that's a good spot for the pitcher in general, you'd say.
It has been historically, over the last few seasons. We'll certainly keep an eye on it and see if anything changes with that this year. Yeah. They've just been like a fairly heavily right-handed lineup for a lot of years. Yeah, so it's just kind of played that way. And then you get the, they're a bad baseball team, so they're bad anywhere except for that launching pad where they play with enhances everybody's offense. So as soon as they get out of Coors Field, everything drops off the table, and it's been that way over the last handful of years. So definitely something I've been targeting. And you can get away with a pitcher like Nick Martinez on that fact, where maybe today it looks like a decent amount of people are on that, right? But maybe that would. I just said before, on a bigger slate, he wouldn't really be a guy we were talking about. Maybe he would on that because he would sneak in at like 5% ownership because nobody would be playing him because he wouldn't really stand out from the pack. So those are the kind of slates where I'm a little bit more interested maybe on chasing an angle like that.
Apparently your dog just startled some people. Larry says, made me jump.
Yeah, Joker's
I heard
I've been off shows for the past like 6 weeks or whatever, so he's not used to me just sitting here talking to myself. He's got no idea what I'm doing right now. He's just thinks I'm sitting here.
It's very confusing for dogs. Yeah. Zoom, doing shows. Dogs are very confused. Yeah. I was actually just listening to my dog. I can hear him having a nightmare where he's just like doing like little yelps in his sleep. It's like, I want to go wake him up.
Does he do like the paws twitching and everything?
Yeah,
running in his sleep. Yeah, Joker's a big dreamer. Yeah, he's always doing that.
All right. The bat side of the game, Rockies with a 3 implied total, Padres 4.5. And any interest in the Rockies?
Yeah, I'll have some. I'll certainly have some of every one of these teams in terms of grabbing stacks and grabbing bats. I don't love them, but they're not expensive. They're not drawing very much popularity at all, especially for being so cheap and going against a pitcher like Nick Martinez. Like all those things that I just pointed out about how Nick Martinez is middling as a pitching option, all those things do play in the Rockies' favor in terms of creating some runs, creating some offense here. I don't hate the idea of Jurickson Profar, Chris Bryant, maybe Charlie Blackmon, certainly CJ Cron, Ryan McMahon. You get a little dicey around Moose. We'll see who Mike Moustakas is this season. Last year dropped to 7 home runs across 285 plate appearances. Year before, 206 plate appearances, only 6 home runs. But we've seen Moose go for 30 or high 20s. I don't have it in front of me, but we've seen big home run totals out of him in the past. I just think he's kind of lost it, whether it's age, injuries caught up with him over the last couple of seasons, whatever it is. I'm not expecting much out of him, but he's cheap. He's in the middle of the lineup against a righty, so you can play him. He's usable. Interesting bats down toward the bottom of the Rockies lineup, certainly with like an Ezekiel Tovar. Ton of speed in that kid. If we're talking about stolen base upside, I definitely think he's going to be interesting for stolen bases all season long. We'll see his on base acumen as a rookie in the majors, but only 2,100 at shortstop on DK, 6.7% owned, 2,600, 1% owned on FanDuel. That's intriguing as a wraparound option. So you can use Tovar from the bottom of the lineup, bring him back up to a Profar Bryant, skip over Blackman and go to Crone kind of a stack, maybe something like that to get a little creative with it. They're going to be a good source of freeing up some salary. They've got a few guys on this team with multi-position eligibility. Depends on what the starting lineup looks like. But if it says as I have it projected, yeah, I think I can definitely thread this together. I don't expect a ton, right? It's not a good baseball team, not a good lineup, but with nobody on them against a pitcher like this, I can get there. And I think it's certainly worth considering. If you want to go like one-offs or mini stacks, something like that, I definitely think there's viability in Chris Bryant. Always, he's just a tremendous hitter. He was injured for most of last season, 181 plate appearances in the end, 306, 376, 475 though. Created runs 25% better than average in those spots, 5 home runs. So he's still got it. Chris Bryant certainly hasn't lost anything. And now we're going to get hopefully a full season of Chris Bryant in Coors Field and see what we were expecting last year. So I really like him as a one-off. I really like CJ Crone. Nice contact profile, solid power, 29 homers last year, 210 ISO. So as far as one-offs go, those guys, Ryan McMahon, maybe, but he's pulling 11% ownership. He's the most popular Rockies bat on DK. So we probably don't need him if we're talking one-offs.
Yeah. We, so looking at the top stacks, we have the Rockies coming in at 7% ownership, 7.2% chance being the top stack, and 9.9% chance being the top value stack. So some nice, just a little bit of positive leverage on the Rockies in this spot. Looks good. How about the other side?
Yeah, they're cheap. I would expect that some of those ownership marks might go up a little bit through the day, just on, virtue of price.
Yeah, that makes sense. The other side of it, we have the Padres, who have the top, they're number one in the top stack. So in terms of top stack odds at 12.8%, what's your level of interest in the Padres? Who particularly do you like?
Yeah, so the Pods, last year I was saying from the beginning of the season, maybe this is a team that's better on paper, better as a real baseball team than a DFS lineup, and that it was on and off true through the season. I won't say it was entirely true, but there were certainly a lot of weeks in the season last year where, this team didn't perform offensively as we thought they would for various reasons, but they're loaded up right now. Looking at this lineup that brought in Xander Bogaerts. So even without Fernando Tatis, they just play really well. Bogey up at the top, into Machado, into Juan Soto, into maybe Nelson Cruz against the lefty here. Jake Cronenworth is a solid player. So 1 through 5, they're very, very solid. And then you can get into mixing and matching some cheap lower owned pieces from the back end of this lineup, like a Trent Grisham, like a Ha-Seong Kim, who I think is interesting with multi-position eligibility, cheap pricing, some speed, a very nice contact profile. So there are pieces that I like. They're very popular though. So if I certainly am not fading, full fading, not playing, whatever we want to call it, the Padres. But if I'm going to undercut the field on a popular stack, it would probably be these Padres. Playing at home in San Diego, it's fine. It's certainly not going to dramatically undercut their offense, but it is more of a pitcher's park than a hitter's park. So there's that factor into it. Kyle Freeland, like I said, certainly not a good pitcher, a guy you can expect them to create some runs against, but he doesn't give up a ton of home runs. So, maybe there's a little bit of a negative in terms of the upside there, the overall ceiling. They've obviously got a tremendous ceiling. They're a very good baseball team. They're a very good offense, but based on popularity, pricing, and the way all that comes together, like I said, if I'm going to undercut a team, I think it would be this one, but certainly very interested in stacks around Bogaerts, Machado, Juan Soto, and then working on any of these other hitters. Nelson Cruz against the lefty has been a thing for the last, century and a half at this point, I think, since Nelson's been playing. So yeah, definitely something I can get into. That said, certainly a down season for him toward the end of the career here. Only 10 homers last year, 103 ISO in 507 plate appearances. So it's not like he only had 200 plate appearances last year. So something to watch out for.
Didn't realize how bad it was last year for Nelson Cruz. Yeah, it's rough relative to his past.
Might have stuck around 1 year too long last year, and now
he's doing it again
on year 2.
That's right. Well, maybe he found some more roids this year, and he'll be back to it. We've got projected for nearly 15% ownership for San Diego, 13% chance to be in the top stack, 13% chance to be in the top value. So just a little bit over owned in the top stacks tool here.
Yeah, anything else? It's one of those teams they're going to be popular, but for a good reason, right?
Right, exactly.
So you gotta you got to play the game theory as far as DFS goes, and then you hope for the baseball part of it's come in and cut them down, and just the baseball of it all, like we were talking about pre-show with Mikey behind the scenes. He had Aaron Nola on the bump yesterday, out to a good lead, and then bam, they got baseballed, and all of a sudden Nola's coming out early, giving up 10 runs or whatever it was. It was it's ugly, but that's how this works, right? Even an ace like Nola, you're going to go out, you're going to make 30 starts, 10 of them are going to be great, 10 of them are going to be shit, and the truth is going to be those 10 starts in the middle, as they've always said.
Yep.
For a guy like Nola, maybe it's like 5 of them are going to be shit, but certainly got one out of the way yesterday.
Todd Strong says Cruz is 42 and still playing. That's being hyperbolic, right? He's not actually 42, is he?
No, I'm pretty sure he is.
Nelson Cruz is 42 years old. I thought he was,
if not 43.
That's insane. Yeah, I mean, it's very impressive that he's still playing, but doesn't make him a great DFS option necessarily. All right. Anything else that you want to say about this Colorado at San Diego game?
Nelson Cruz will be 43 on July 1st. So like midway through the season, he turns 43.
That is so insane.
Yeah. His first year was a cup of coffee in 2005 with Milwaukee. He had 8 games, 7 plate appearances. First full season, we'll call it probably 2007, 333 plate appearances with Texas. So he's been around for a little bit. That's
very impressive. All right, we'll move on. But first, guys, if you live, I've got a great offer from Bet365. If you live in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, or Virginia, it's almost a too good to be true offer. Well, then you can take advantage of this offer, Terry. It's a great one. You just have to put $1 in and bet $1 on Bet365. You'll get $200 in bonus bets back from Bet365. So you play through those. They're real money after you play through them. That's just as good as a deal as you're ever going to find anywhere. That's like, I mean, your risk is $1. If everything goes incredibly wrong, you lose all your bets. You lose exactly $1. If things go right, you can make infinite money. So unlimited upside, very, very little downside. Sign up for Bet365 if you live in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, or Virginia. You do need to make a deposit. You need to play through before you're going to actually access any of that money. You got to play through those bets, but I mean, it'll be real money as soon as you play through the bet. So great deal there. By the way, the legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. But again, if you live in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, or Virginia, you're not going to find a better deal than this. Turn $1 into $200 in bonus bets at Bet365. Check that out. Link is in the description of this video. Just click the link. It'll take you to the promo. Great deal going on there. All right, Terry, next game on the schedule, D-backs at Dodgers. The D-backs, a 3 implied run total. Dodgers 4.5. Merrill Kelly on the mound for the Diamondbacks. Dustin May for the Dodgers. Starting with the pitchers, how much interest do you have in Merrill Kelly and or Dustin May?
So May would be the favorite of the two here in terms of just overall talent. I think he's got just lights out electric stuff when he's healthy. Being healthy and actually being on the mound and pitching is certainly an issue, but when he's up there, the stuff is ridiculous. If you remember, not last year so much because he only threw 30 innings last year, but the year before, well, it was only 23 innings, but when he was first up, there were just so many tweets going around from like Pitch Ninja about the horizontal break on his 2-seam fastball. It would start, over here and it ends over there, just, different sides of the room basically. So he's just an absurdly talented pitcher. We'll see what he's got for us this year. We'll see how many innings we get out of him this year, but definitely a guy I'm interested in. That said, he's popular on DK, pushing 27% on the 2-pitcher site. He's 8,400. He's going up against an improved Diamondbacks lineup. I don't dislike this lineup this year. I think they've got a decent amount of young talent. They're bringing back some guys who proved themselves over the last couple of years. So they're going to be interesting to watch through this season. But I think, in terms of pure talent, pure upside for strikeout potential, I think Dustin May is definitely a guy to consider for this slate. Kelly on the other side, talented enough pitcher. He falls into that like mid-range. He's a little bit better than the Nick Martinez's of the world, but he's in that mid-range as far as the strikeout upside. Only a 22% strikeout rate over 203 innings last year, but he put up a 3.85 xFIP, a 1.14 WHIP, a 3.37 ERA. So his ERA was a little bit better than his xFIP was, but certainly not something where it's a full run or a run plus different. So it's fairly reliable numbers. Doesn't give up a ton of home runs, only a 2.61% home run rate, 36.3% hard contact last year. So I think he's got talent. It's just a brutal matchup going up against these Dodgers that's really going to hurt us here. That said, though, 2.5% owned for 8,300 on DK, 9,000 on FanDuel is probably a little bit aggressive considering the opponent, but only a 1% ownership share. It's baseball. we're going to play that angle with it a little bit. So like I said, I'm going to have a little bit of everybody here. It's easy enough to get over the field on a 1% ownership share, a 2.5% ownership share. You push it up to 10% on your 2-pitcher site, something like that. Hope for the best going up against the Dodgers on a limited pitching slate. I think he's certainly viable. You got to get the good game here. You got to get the clunker out of the Dodgers, but handful of strikeouts, gets through a few clean innings here. I think he could put up a serviceable score. I don't know that he's got like slate breaking upside for us today, but I think serviceable especially out of an SP2 on DK might be enough from our SP2 pool today. So I think he's playable. I don't love the spot for him though.
Okay. Sean V in chat saying Merrill Kelly has never beaten the Dodgers. 0-5 last season, 8 ERA, 0-9 career versus the Dodgers. Do we care?
We're not using those stats.
Yeah. Do we care at all about that versus how he's fared against this team in the past?
No, not at all.
I mean, it is like it's relevant because it is the Dodgers. So like we are factoring in that it's a really tough matchup for any.
Yeah, I mean
pitcher.
the Dodgers have been good for Merrill Kelly's entire career. Like that's not, that's sure he hasn't beaten them because they're freaking fantastic. But like there are issues with. And it's the issues we always get into with BVP, like especially when you talk about like this pitcher over the course of the last 10 years has been great against the White Sox. Well, the White Sox lineup has not been the same lineup over the last 10 years. He doesn't just pitch well against the laundry, right? He doesn't get mad like a bull and want to charge the color red. That's not how this works. So yeah, the Dodgers are just really, really good. Kelly's been on bad baseball teams as well. I don't really care about ERA. I'd be maybe a little bit interested in what like his xFIP number was against the Dodgers there, but it's just not something that's a part of my process, not something I care about, especially when we're talking about wins, because you also have to consider in those games, Kelly's probably faced one of the Dodgers' better pitchers every time and had a completely inept lineup behind him, supporting him, creating runs. So of course he's not winning ball games.
Yep. Same analysis here. I think it's just not something I'm factoring in, but wanted to hear if you had a different take. I mean, it's like those things, sure. Maybe sometimes there are cases where it's like these things that are seeming consequential can matter in some cases, but I think in this case, it's pretty clearly just a case of he's been pitching for a bad team against a really, really good Dodgers team. So like, exactly. Yeah, what are you going to do with that? Exactly. Like we kind of know the odds here.
Yeah. And just since it's, one of the first shows of the year, we might have some new people in there. We don't want to be caring about BVP, batter versus pitcher, right? Could there be something to this guy sees that pitcher, the ball coming out of his hand better than he does other pitchers, blah, 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 blah. Sure. There could certainly be that. Certainly guys can hit some pitchers better than others. Guys don't necessarily hit sliders well. This guy throws a wicked slider. So there's factors like that can be a thing, right? It is impossible to quantify with the small sample sizes that we get in baseball, right? Baseball normalizes for hitting over like 1,000 plate appearances. So if you get 1,000 plate appearances of Mike Trout versus, some pitcher, Pedro Martinez or whoever it was that Trout used to murder, that used to be a good pitcher. If you get 1,000 plate appearances, then you can come bring your BVP to me. Until we get that of the one-on-one, it's a lot of happenstance, especially when we're like, oh, this guy's got 5 hits and 10 at bats and 3 home runs against this pitcher. That is meaningless. That is happenstance. So take BVP out of your process on day 2 of the season and thank me at the end of the year.
Sean V says he's got a mental block or something. I don't think it's that he's got a mental block. I think he's just facing a really tough lineup every time he faces the Yankees. But anyway, we can move on to talk about the bats a little bit. Starting with the D-backs, how much interest, if any, do you have in stacking or playing one-offs from the D-backs?
Yeah, I think we can get to some Diamondbacks here. They're not all that popular, a little bit more so on DK than they are on FanDuel, but very, very playable numbers in terms of the salaries, in terms of the ownership. Corbin Carroll, Ketel Marte, Jake McCarthy, Christian Walker is a nice 4-man off the top of that in the projected lineup that I've got. None of those guys is more expensive than the 4,400 that we've got Ketel Marte, and the other 3 guys are in the low 3s on DK pricing. So that's really compelling in terms of value, in terms of potential upside. You've got some exciting players in that group. Christian Walker last year, 36 home runs in 667 plate appearances, a 235 ISO, created runs 22% better than average. Everybody in the top 6 hitters of my projected lineup created runs well above average last year. So you've got a nice little group to stack together here. The other 2 guys, the 5 and 6 in my projected here, are Josh Rojas, the infielder, and Lourdes Gurriel Jr., the former Blue Jays outfielder, who is now a part of this team. Gurriel's very, very interesting. Last season, 493 plate appearances, 291, 343, 400, only a 108 ISO, 5 home runs, 3 stolen bases. So the counting stats weren't really there, but still created runs 14% better than average. And he's got a better stick than that when it comes to power. I think we can get up to like a 15, 20 home run season, 15, 20 stolen bases out of him as well. So very, very interesting there, and just not getting any attention for a fairly cheap price from the middle of the lineup here. So at least 1 through 6, I can get to this team. I wouldn't necessarily sleep on the lefty Alec Thomas if he's in the lineup. Decent little pop in that bat from time to time. Nick Ahmed, Gabe Moreno at the bottom of the lineup. Take them or leave them. They're cheap. You can build them in if you need to offset some salary, but definitely the top end of this lineup. Like I said, I think Dustin May is an absurdly talented pitcher. I'm very curious to see how deep into this game he pitches. Not that the Dodgers bullpen is a weakness by any means, but I think if you can chase the starter and then get into some bullpen arms, some mixing and matching and all of that, I think the Diamondbacks has some underrated upside here. So I'm interested in that stack today.
Nice. So what do we have the ownership at on the, let me look it up. The D-backs we have at 7.7% ownership with a 21% chance of being the top value stack on the board. That's really, really high odds of being the top value stack. 6.8% chance of being the top stack overall. So yeah, they look pretty good in the top stack school as well. That's it's a very interesting one. The other side of it, though, how much interest do you have in the Dodgers? I mean, they shell Merrill Kelly every time they face him. Are you stacking the Dodgers in 100% of your lineups?
Yeah, let me tell you about how Merrill Kelly has never beaten this team, and they create 8 runs a game against them, and blah 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 blah, whatever those points were. No, it's right. We take the name off the jersey, take the history away. I don't care. Just give me the stat: 200 innings from a guy who struck out 22% last year. The year before, 158 innings, struck out 19.5%. We know Kelly's not going to be up there just sitting Dodgers down, mowing through this lineup like a buzzsaw. He's going to need some defense. He's going to be putting the ball in play. You give me this Dodgers lineup against the pitcher who's going to be putting the ball in play, I'll take it every time. That said, they're expensive. They're popular. They're the Dodgers. Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman. It's just an all-star team, basically, like we said all last year. Will Smith, Max Muncy, JD Martinez is going to be interesting to watch through this season. Former Red Sox star. Only 5.6% owned, 4,800 on DK, 2,900 on FanDuel, pulling 10.8% ownership. I'm on the JD Martinez is basically lost at camp. I don't think he's completely washed. Like 16 home runs in 596 plate appearances last year. Perfectly fine. 174 ISO. I think he's like that guy this year. I don't expect a return to like the 30 home run monster JD Martinez, but I think he's going to be a serviceable piece and potentially create or drive in a lot of runs for this team if he's in the middle of that lineup. So even if he's not homering, I expect some decent production out of him. And if he's going to be inexpensive and under-owned all season long, that's going to be an interesting piece in this lineup and one that I'll chase. Back end of the lineup, we've got David Peralta, we've got Miguel Vargas, we've got Miguel Rojas, James Outman, some usable pieces. They're drawing mid-range popularity for names like that. Like there's better back ends of the lineup for cheaper, for less popularity. But if you're stacking Dodgers, those guys are going to help offset some salary and help you get to interesting combinations, offset some of the popularity. But certainly, the focus is up at the top with the Will Smiths of the world, the Max Muncy's of the world. And then I don't need to tell anybody to play Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, the two of the very best baseball players of their generation. So definitely include those guys.
TTID forever says there needs to be some nuance. It shouldn't be the focus, but knowing he has lost 8 times in a row, seeing where humans and robots has an effect.
Wins and losses are meaningless. We don't care about wins and losses. Wins are the dumbest stat to pay attention to for a pitcher. It means nothing. It's first of all, the way that they calculate it is stupid and flawed. Second of all, it depends on their team scoring runs, which they have absolutely nothing to do with. It depends on so many factors that are completely out of the pitcher's control. Wins are not something you guys should be paying attention to at all. Not in evaluating pitchers in real life, and certainly not for DFS. It's just meaningless.
Yeah, I agree. And so I'll respond. So TTID, I agree with you in some sports. Like I think that we do sometimes underweight some narrative factors. Sometimes like there are narrative factors in a lot of sports where it's like you can't really quantify this. So I think it's a mistake to factor it in is the general analysis. And I think there are spots where you can say like, if you want to take a stand, like, well, Russell Westbrook, he's a vengeful guy. So like maybe this revenge spot actually means something. He'll have the ball in his hand. Maybe, you can take advantage of narratives. Sometimes I think baseball is the one sport where for me, I don't factor in narratives like at all. I mean, there are rare instances, there are cases where I factor in narratives, but like it is such a cut and dry numbers game to me more so.
So difficult. Even if you really, really, really hate this pitcher, let's say Adolf Hitler was on the mound and I am at the plate and I really want to hit a home run off that fucker. It's still really goddamn hard to hit a home run. Okay. It's not just something you can decide to go do. It's really, really hard to strike out Mike Trout. It's not something you can just decide to go do, right? These are difficult, challenging things. To your point, I don't really like to chase narratives in general, even in basketball. But that is the spot where I do think almost exclusively around a guy like a Russ Westbrook, a point guard, a guy who's going to be controlling everything in the game, have the ball in his hands, where we can say, all right, and like, let's say somebody else is out or whatever, so it's going to increase his minutes. So we'll take his minutes from here to here, his usage from here to here, and you can create an expectation. You can create the math behind it. You cannot do that. You cannot quantify it in baseball. So I only like to dabble with it in spots like that, where it's directly Russ Westbrook will have the ball in his hands every possession, and he will decide what to do with it, whether that's shoot, pass, whatever.
Right.
In those specific cases, maybe you can convince me.
The Kobe final game, I was like, I didn't factor in the narrative nearly enough. Like, there was a part of me that was like, this is Kobe's final game. I know he's been shit all year, but like, he is not going to go out without giving up a fight here. So like,
sure,
there are narratives in basketball where it's like, and then he put up 1,000,000 points. I forget what it was.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing, right? Yeah, his final game, he's going to go out there and take 67 shots. Probably make at least a handful of them. So yeah, that's the kind of thing, but baseball just functions differently. It functions differently from every other sport we've got. It's maybe not hockey, but it certainly functions differently from the other popular DFS sports, NBA and NFL. It's just take those thoughts for those sports and just toss them out of your heads, guys, because that's not how the game works.
Yeah. I mean, yep. Yeah, I see the super chat. I've just responded. Josh Phillips says, you can't be human if you don't think revenge games in the NBA are real. So I think most people will agree that they're real. I think a lot of analysts will say it's just impossible to quantify it. So it's like, you shouldn't really factor it in long-term because long-term is kind of going to even out some. You don't really know which players are going to be vengeful, but I think there are spots where I do factor it in.
A lot of times too, we get people especially in chat, I love our chat community and everything, but you get a lot of people who just like, this guy used to play for that team and now he doesn't. So therefore it's a revenge situation. That's certainly not always the case. A lot of times, hey, a team drafted me where I shouldn't have been drafted, brought me along, developed me. Now I was able to sign with this other franchise for a huge contract that I don't really deserve. I'm thinking of a lot of Knicks players. So yeah, they left harmoniously. They have no revenge in their hearts, and people just decide that there's revenge narratives. So it's like, it's just chasey. Anytime we're trying to get in somebody's head and then use that to evaluate I think we're just getting way far afield from, let's stick with the things we know. Let's stick with the things we can quantify. That's the path to success. How often do you hear Alex saying, well, this guy grew up in this town and that's why I like to play him? It's just not a thing. It's just not a thing. Not for what we do.
I want to see what did TTA do? Said I said that in a way to get Terry pumped up, as I love his passion for baseball. So he's just trying to mess with you. Jorge Jacome though,
early in the season, I got to get my chops. It's been a while since I've been talking about this stuff. So
it's true.
Terry's excited. He's pumped.
Terry's always pumped to talk baseball. Jorge Jacome left us a $10 super chat. Context for the chat. Trying to argue versus Terry about MLB is like arguing versus Neil about NFL. You guys have the best guys in the industry here, the shamans of NFL and MLB together. Appreciate that, Jorge. It's appreciate the super chat. Appreciate the compliment.
We do appreciate that. And Jorge's just one of our most generous people we've got. Versus employees or members. He's just throwing super chats at us. He's throwing memberships at the community. It's a great guy. Love to see him succeed in all the success he had last year. Hope it continues this year.
50 memberships yesterday for Jorge to the chat. So pretty great. All right. Well, we only have one game left on actually, I'll ask this. Larry C had asked earlier, do you think anybody's going to get tackled? Any fans going to get tackled at any of these games tonight? Was that in an MLB game? I didn't know where that was.
Did that happen last night? I missed that. If that happened.
You missed the video of a guy proposing. He ran onto the field, turned around, was on his knee proposing, and just got decked. Got tackled like great form tackle by one of the security guards. I have no idea. Maybe somebody in chat knows.
Like I told you, I woke up about a half hour before the show, so I missed all the highlight shows this morning. I totally missed that.
Yeah, it was something. It's all over, and there was some debate about whether the security guard, because it was like the guy's just proposed. He's on his knee proposing. The security guard just decked him. Whether it was really necessary, I don't really think it was totally necessary, but it's kind of a mix. Like, you do kind of know what's going to happen when you run onto a field, but
yeah, hey, no idea where it was. Rules are rules, whether you're proposing or not, right? We've maybe forgotten that as a society in a lot of ways, but like, if you break the rules, there's consequences. I don't know what I'm thinking about right now.
All right. It sounds like it might have been at Dodger Stadium. I don't know. Anything else you want to say about this D-backs at Dodgers game before we get on to the final game of the night?
I think this is
he's showing it. Mike is showing it right now.
Here we go. Yeah. I like that they went back to him. Usually they cut away. There we go. All right.
Just well, it wasn't the broadcast. I think it was a cell phone video.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just
That's a solid hit. That dude lined that hit up. You saw him take a second to lower his shoulder and line that hit up properly. That's a solid tackle. That dude should play for the Rams.
Yeah, hopefully she said yes is right.
Yeah,
right. It's funny reading the chat because this is how like controversial it is online. So we get TTID forever says only in America does that happen. It's pretty obvious. Dude didn't mean any harm. And then SMP 1993 play stupid games, win stupid prizes applies. Yeah, I think I can make an argument for both, to be honest.
I do think it's unnecessary, right? It's a little over the top. You certainly could have just jogged over to that guy and been like, hey man, like we're going to drag you off the field if you don't get up and leave right freaking now. That said, solid hit by that guy. But the only in America thing, obviously we have not seen soccer games where fans are rioting and murdering each other in the stands, or soccer games where they literally have nobody in the middle and the fans only at the ends of the stadium. It's not an exclusive. There's a lot of things that are exclusively American problems, but fan violence, unfortunately, is not one of them.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Final game of the night, Guardians at Mariners. The Guardians with a 3.25 implied team total. Mariners with the biggest on the board, 4.75 implied team total, at least as of when I entered this earlier today. Hunter Gaddis on the mound for Cleveland, Robbie Ray for Seattle. We'll start with the pitchers. How much interest do you have, if any, in the pitchers in this game?
Robbie Ray certainly will be in a fair amount of my lineups. I'll probably undercut the field by a little bit just because it's Robbie Ray, and that's what I typically tend to do with Robbie Ray. Cost me a little bit during his really good season 2 years ago. Last year, he kind of came back to earth and was the Robbie Ray that we knew for years before that dynamite season in 2021. So I think he is. I think the truth of Robbie Ray is that he's around the pitcher that we saw last year. 27.4% strikeout rate over 189 innings, a 3.58 xFIP to a 3.71 ERA, a 1.19 WHIP, an 8% walk rate. The year before, he had bumped up to his 32.1% strikeout rate and dropped down to a 6.9% walk rate. The 8% walks that he put up last season are still very good compared to where he was prior to 2021, because back then he was walking 10-12% a game. So, or 10-12% of hitters. So he still managed to keep that down, which helped him across the board. But it's still, when he's putting 8% on versus like the 6.9, and when the strikeouts drop by 5%, that really cuts into that. It's not the absolute ace Cy Young contender, Robbie Ray. Now it's just like a really good strikeout pitcher who can get himself into a lot of trouble from time to time by putting guys on too aggressively, and might not be able to pitch his way out of it. So, and does give up a fair amount of home runs as well. That's the other thing with Robbie Ray. Even in his excellent 2021, a 4.27% home run rate with a 42.9% hard hit rate. Last season, 4.13% home run rate with a 39.1% hard hit, 7.9% barrel rate. So he gives up power. He gets himself into trouble. He definitely has very high end strikeout upside, but the Guardians are and continue to be a very good team at avoiding the strikeouts. A lot of guys, similar to what we were saying about the Astros, looking down the numbers for strikeouts for this team from last year, 9.4, 16.6, 12%, 15.8%, 19.6, down to 14.6 for Miles Straw at the bottom of the lineup. You've got Mike Zunino in this lineup now, who was pushing like 40%. So if you're looking at the average, that'll pull the average up a little bit and be a little bit deceptive. And then Gabe Arias is like a 28% strikeout guy. Everybody else is at worst league average, and a lot of guys who are well better than league average at avoiding strikeouts. So it might not be the greatest strikeout spot in the world for Robbie Ray. So I would cut down my expectation for that. I'm a little bit worried about Robbie Ray in this spot. I'd be worried about getting aggressively over the field on him. If you're at the field, I think you're okay. And there's certainly upside as well, but it's a danger spot against this Guardians lineup. So I don't love it. Hunter Gaddis, 5,000 on DK, certainly viable as an SP2. I don't think I'm going there at 6,400 on FanDuel. He's a relief pitcher. He was slotted for their bullpen. Had a very nice spring, was stretched out as a starter in the spring, but he was slotted to go into their bullpen, and then Tristan McKenzie came up injured for a couple of months. So he's going to be in the rotation, at least to start the season. He's been a starter in the minors. Reasonably good numbers, some premium strikeout numbers in the minors, but we'll see. And I just don't expect a ton of depth, and I don't expect a ton of production against what I think is a very good Mariners lineup. There are strikeouts to be had in that Mariners lineup. I'm not sure he's the guy who's going to get them for us at this level.
And someone was asking about weather concerns. I don't see any weather concerns in any of the games today. I think we're good.
No, both
on
the spots that had questionable weather are domes.
Yep. So not an issue there. I also want to say, so I saw BC Game was asking for some betting picks. And we don't really do that on the show. And I haven't done any research in the betting picks, but I do have some advice for you, which is if you have not yet signed up for our chalkboard, I think we haven't talked about this on baseball shows yet, but the Odd Shopper channel recently launched a new chalkboard, which is like a Discord, but it's betting focused Discord where like you can link to the books and stuff, and it's completely free. So you just sign up for the Odd Shopper chalkboard. It's an app. It is entirely free. TTID says, great segue. This isn't actually a read that I'm doing. This is just good advice that we haven't said on a baseball show yet. I want to recommend. Okay, so Yokastic just put it into the chat. Join the Odd Shopper chalkboard. I think it's just an app. I don't think you can actually do it on your computer. I might be wrong about that, but make sure you get on your phone, click that link, join the Odd Shopper chalkboard, because people are talking all day about their bets, including like Lindy, Lofty, Aton, Ben Rossa, all of our betting guys are giving advice throughout the day in the chalkboard. It's completely free, so definitely recommend checking that out.
Going by last year, like our strikeout props crushed last year. The home runs were very good, and then you get some of the analysts chiming in with their home run picks and everything. So if you're playing those, that's a lot of really good sources, but specifically the strikeout props. I just absolutely know, like Sean's on, I know just murdered the world on strikeout props last year. So some really sharp stuff going on.
And it's free to join the app. And, our insider guys, they're using our stuff that actually does cost money. So like they're giving you picks based on things that do cost money. So you're kind of getting behind the scenes a little bit for free. So I definitely recommend checking that out. And also we're on the Stokastic channel right now. If you're not yet subscribed to the Odd Shopper channel, that's our sister channel, brother channel. I don't know what you want to call it. Our partner channel, the Odd Shopper channel. It's also weird cousin channel. They talk about betting and stuff throughout the day. I know the Odd Shop is coming up today at 3:00 Central Time, 4:00 Eastern. I think probably Lindy's Likes, Leans, and Locks is already out, so he probably gave some picks there. So make sure you check out Odd Shopper, check out our chalkboard. A lot of great places to get some betting picks as well. Okay, so we talked about these pitchers, good and deep. Let's talk about the batters in this game. Any interest in the Guardians today?
Yeah, I tell you what, looking at their pricing, they're pretty cheap. They're both sites really. I'm trying to just quickly do the relative pricing in my head. Going up against Robbie Ray, there's a lot of opportunity there. Like what I was talking about when I was dinging Robbie Ray a little bit. Yeah, he's a very good strikeout pitcher, but he certainly serves up a lot of opportunity to create runs. And this is a team that's very good at getting on base and creating runs. There's a good amount of power. There's certainly a lot of speed on this team. If we're talking in terms of runs created, the top 6 hitters in this lineup last season were all well above average by WRC plus. The average WRC plus for the top 6 hitters was 125. So on average, they were 25% better than average creating runs through the top 6 hitters in this lineup. Those are Stephen Kwan, Ahmed Rosario, Jose Ramirez, Josh Bell, Oscar Gonzalez, and Andres Jimenez, all of whom have a decent amount of pop, most of whom have stolen base upside. The stolen base totals, the only guy who didn't steal, or excuse me, 2 guys, Josh Bell and Oscar Gonzalez didn't steal bases last season. Stephen Kwan, 19, Ahmed Rosario, 18, Jose Ramirez, 20, Andres Jimenez, 20. When you're getting 20 stolen bases out of a guy who also hit 29 home runs in Jose Ramirez and went 280, 355, 514, that's a super duper star at the third base spot. He is alone in talent at third base this season. So there's Jose Ramirez. There's everybody else. You build around him. He's only 12% owned for 5,900. Everybody else on this team is below 5,000. Actually, below 4,700 on DK is the next highest price for Josh Bell. You can put this team together in a lot of interesting ways. They're all owned. The highest ownership is 12% on Jose Ramirez. Rosario is right there at 11%, but those are, that's fine. 5-game slate for those 2 hitters. Take that all day long. I will probably look to be over the field if these numbers hold for where the Guardians are. Don't really care that it's Robbie Ray. Like I said, you can just baseball it and you're going to get a certain percentage of starts where they're just going to get to that pitcher anyway. And then you factor in all of Robbie Ray's warts on top of it. You factor in the fact that it's early season, get into that bullpen. I mean, actually, let me correct that. They have a dynamite bullpen in Seattle as well. Another team with one of the very best bullpens in baseball. But that said, again, anytime I'm getting into the bullpen and I can start mixing and matching hitters against pitchers, and the requirement to face 3 hitters and everything is still there. So I think it's an interesting spot for an under-owned Guardians team.
Is this because it's a 5-game slate, are you doing anything different in terms of stacking? Like, are you going to do, like, if you're on DraftKings, I know you play primarily on FanDuel, at least is that still the case? So I guess it doesn't apply as much on FanDuel. But like sometimes on these shorter slates, I will, because there's no like incredibly great spots, maybe I'll go to like 4-4 stacks, 4-3 stacks instead of 5-3. Is that something you would consider doing on a shorter slate like this?
Yeah, I'm still primarily going to be building, FanDuel wise 4-4-4-3-1, DK wise, the five mans and the full stacks. But yeah, I do think on shorter slates there are more opportunities to start working in like mid-size stack, small stack, like a 3-3-2 kind of a thing. Start using some more one-offs. I don't still love going like a 4 full and then 4 one-offs.
Yep.
I like to correlate, so I might go like 4-2-2 if we're talking FanDuel. Allow some more things like that to at least trickle into the pool of lineups that I'm sorting, and then just by factor of process and how these things calculate, I still end up getting to primarily 4-4s and 4-3-1s. But there will be a little bit more around the edges that'll creep into my pool on a smaller slate. So yes, and then also with that, like you said, you don't have the Yankees on this slate. You don't have some of the major upside teams. You do have several very, very good teams, but I do think it's a mixed bag in terms of potential qualities. And we're seeing that kind of in the tools today. So I do think it would pay to potentially get it spread out, or at least let that into your process, maybe a little bit more than normal.
Yep, for sure. And then final spot to talk about here, the Mariners, who have the highest implied team total on the entire slate at 4.75. How much interest do you have in stacking the Mariners or individual bats here?
Yeah, loads of interest. Obviously, you're going up against Hunter Gaddis here, who, like I said, is a young guy, not a ton of experience in the show, only 2 starts last year, 7.1 innings, or 7 1/3 innings rather, 12.5% strikeout rate in that tiny sample. I don't expect him to pitch deep into this game. I think they're going to get into the bullpen. Cleveland's bullpen's all right. A couple premium arms on the backside of it, but the middle of the bullpen is only just, fine. Very, very talented Seattle lineup here. Julio Rodriguez up at the top, potential 40-40 player this year, potential, God knows, 50-50. I don't actually know what the ceiling is. I don't think he's going to get 50 home runs, but the stolen base ceiling is probably around 50 for Rodriguez this year. He's just dynamite. Last season, rookie of the year, 284, 345, 509, 28-25, 13.1% barrel rate, 50.7% hard hit. Don't really need to sell him too hard. So let's skip down a few spots. We do have Colton Wong and Ty France in my projected lineup hitting 2-3. Both of those guys are fine. They are inexpensive. They're not all that owned. Decent hit tools, decent ability to put the ball over the wall, drive in runs for you. The guys I'm really interested in, though, 4, 5, 6, Teoscar Hernandez, Cal Raleigh, Eugenio Suarez, and actually 7 as well, Jared Kelnick. I think that is a great little pool of players who are not properly priced. Hernandez is at 5,300, but he's only 10% owned. But the other guys, for the power potential that those guys have, they're cheap. They're not drawing a ton of ownership attention. Cal Raleigh is at 17% on DK where you need catchers, but not so much on FanDuel. And then nobody's really going to Suarez, and certainly nobody's going to Kelnick. Kelnick murdered the spring. He had a monster spring. He is still the guy who had a premium prospect grade. He has struggled at the major league level his first 2 seasons. 377 plate appearances in 21, 181, 265, 350 with 14 homers. Ouch. Last year, 181 plate appearances, 141, 221, 313, 7 homers. Ouch. But he is a premium prospect still. He is still a guy that I believe in. And you can look at the contact profile to prove that out. A 13.6% barrel rate. His hard hit rate was bad for having a barrel rate like that. He was only 35% hard hit, and he struck out 33% of the time. But if he's putting bat on ball and barreling at 13% of the time, those hard hits are going to come up. We'll see what happens with the strikeouts. He might be a Joey Gallo type, right? He might be a high 20s, low 30s strikeout guy, but who crushes the pitch when he actually makes contact. We'll see. But I think there's major upside there, and people are sleeping on him right now. 2,700 on DK, 7% on, 2,600 on FanDuel, 2.9% on. Get some Jared Kelnick into your Seattle stacks. Tommy La Stella, JP Crawford, serviceable players. La Stella is more of a hit tool specialist and a replacement guy. JP Crawford can steal you a couple bags, maybe get on base from the bottom, be serviceable as a wraparound. But really, for me, it's like 1 through 7 in as many different combinations as I can make. I really like the Seattle spot today.
All right. Well, we made it through all of the games, but Terry, we did get a couple requests for some dong picks. Can you give us a dong pick here?
I have not really had a opportunity to go through it, but let me sort here real quick. And it's going to be tricky because the Seattle numbers are massively skewed right now by the small sample. So everyone on Seattle is blown through the top of my home run model, but it's not accurate to reality right now. So let me give you a one that makes some sense. Let me give you a little Eloy Jimenez. 11.66 in my home run model puts him over the magic number. Probably a guy who's not going to get as much attention as he deserves. Like I said, I think it was 15 home runs last year, but a guy we've certainly seen hit plenty of home runs so far, and just needs to be healthy out there. And love the profile for his contacts. So I'll go with Eloy Jimenez as a preliminary home run pick. Catch up with me later in the day to find out some better thought out ones.
He's modest, but Terry always has a dong pick ready, but only if you ask. You have to ask for Terry's dong picks. He's a gentleman. All right. Any final words, Terry?
No, it's going to be an interesting slate. I'm looking forward to this one. Some time to build throughout the afternoon, take care of some stuff, and put some content out in the world. And yeah, we'll see where we come down. But it's going to be a fun slate. Looking forward to it. A lot of mixing and matching. I think it's a good slate to get variant with your lineups. Like, get creative with how you're putting some of these things together. Don't be afraid of taking some chances on some of these pitchers. Don't just follow the field down the line with everybody, because I think it's a good slate to get a little bit weird and a little bit different.
Perfect. So I think I forgot to ask earlier in the show to give us a like on the channel. So please, on your way out, please do like the video if you enjoy the content. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. We have plenty of shows coming up. In fact, in 13 minutes, I will be on the Underdog NBA show with Eric. Then if you head on over to the Odd Shopper channel at 4 Eastern, 3 o'clock Central to talk some betting on the Odd Shop with, I don't know who's on today, but it's, Lofty, Lindy, Ben Rasa, Aton, all those guys over there. And then finally, of course, we have NBA Deeper Dive in live before lock tonight. It's not a 2-gamer tonight. We have I believe a 13-game NBA slate to talk about tonight as well. So stick around the channel where we'll be busy all day.
Good to see they're still playing basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for watching. And yeah, check out the Underdog NBA show in just over 10 minutes.